Great. Well, we're at 5:30 Montreal time. So those of you out on the West Coast, I guess it's 1:30. And for those of you in other parts of the world, Nigeria, Turkey, welcome. I'm not sure what time it is, but hopefully it's not too late. We're right around our starting time, so maybe we should get started. Should we do a little intro of our panel, David?
Sure. So we have, I'm not sure, all the people are speaking. I guess I'll start off. Maybe I'll just introduce myself briefly. I'm David Frost. I'm Associate Dean Student Affairs. And I'm going to give just a quick overview of the faculty, and then I'm going to hand off the reins to representative from our Entrepreneurial Engine Center. That'll be Katya, Marc. And then after that, I think our Associate Director, Kaila Folinsbee, will then kind of give you some more specifics about the programs that are available and some really key information about funding, how do you find a supervisor and things like that. And we're always looking to get lots of good questions. So we want to, motor through the main material fairly quickly and just find out what questions you have. And so we'll have one of our advisors from our McGill Engineering Student Center, Nancy Lewis. She'll be monitoring the chat, and she'll maybe curate that and either answer the questions or prompt one of us to answer the questions. And soon to be incoming, one more person I can see on my screen is Anne Kietzig. She'll be coming in shortly as Associate Dean Student Affairs, and also Savio, who has been working behind the scenes, putting everything together. So he does the heavy lifting of these sessions and, put together the presentation and, communications and so on. So he'll be doing some more communications afterwards as well, a session. So did I miss anybody? I think that's pretty well everybody. So maybe we can just move. I'll just give a few remarks, the first 6 or 8 slides. So our first slide kind of gives you some overview. We have, try to answer the question, why would you want to pursue grad studies in the Faculty of Engineering at McGill? And first of all, we have some fantastic professors, researchers, internationally known. And we also have a really high quality student body. And our students are really sought after, certainly our master students. I get professors, calling me or emailing me from my alma mater, Caltech, Stanford, people from MIT, and they keep asking me, do you have any good master students? Because they really want our students. And I say, no, we don't have any good ones. They're all staying here. But we have great students. In fact, we have in terms of undergrad, we have the highest incoming average of all Canadian universities of the undergrad students coming in, and many of those continue on for grad studies. We have world-class research going on. There's a lot of centers and institutes that connect professors from different areas to do interdisciplinary research, and I'll mention a few of those briefly. This really connects professors, not only of common interest, but also common facilities. And so if you're working within a center, you may have access to equipment from one of the other partners. It's going to broaden your research potential. Study in Montreal. McGill is right downtown, as you're probably aware. It's very safe. It's a very lively campus. And I'll say a little bit more about student life in Montreal, maybe in our next slide. Just move to that. So McGill is consistently rated quite highly, depending on the particular rating system that you look at. The QS World University Rankings is well known, 27th overall. Montreal, from your perspective as a student, it turns out that Montreal is a great city to be a student. And there's a poll there's an analysis that takes place by QS as well, listing the best student cities. In 2022, we were ranked 9th. And I looked at the historical data. Back in 2018, we were actually 4th. And then after the pandemic, we kind of slipped a little bit. 2023, currently we're 14th, but actually we're the top in Canada. So we're always the top in Canada. So that's saying a lot. I see a number of you from Vancouver, and that's my hometown, actually. I went to UBC as an undergrad, and I know what fantastic city Vancouver is, but Montreal has a lot to offer. just in terms of its vibrant culture, relatively affordable, like comparing to Vancouver, Toronto, and all the other measures that this ranking is based on. Montreal consistently ranks top in Canada. So it's a great place to be a student. Also being right downtown, you have access to all of the things happening, you know, whether it's the restaurants, the nightlife, you know, the traffic jams at 3 in the morning on St. Catherine. Some of our alumni, we've had 12 Nobel laureates among our alumni. We've had 3 Canadian prime ministers going back to, I think it was Sir John Abbott, our 3rd prime minister. Sir Wilfrid Laurier is a McGill alumni. He is alumnus. He's our 7th prime minister. And then I think the latest guy, what's his name, sitting in warming his seat, he's also McGill alumni. Moving to the next slide. In terms of our student body, we have roughly a little bit more than 1,000 grad students, typically, pretty much evenly divided between PhD and masters. And within the masters, that's split not exactly equally, but substantial number of thesis versus a non-thesis master's students. Roughly 1/3 of our grad students are female, and the number of female professors is rapidly increasing over the last few years. It's up to about 22% faculty. Most of our recent hires actually have been female. Moving to the next slide, just listing the department units. So we have 6 departments within Faculty of Engineering, as shown here: bioengineering, chemical engineering, civil engineering, electrical computer engineering, which also runs software engineering program, mechanical engineering, mining materials. And we also have 2 schools, the School of Architecture, which has an undergraduate program, and urban planning, which is, architecture has undergrad and grad program, and urban planning only a grad program. So that's the number of different departments. Within those, there's several different programs. Moving to the next slide, we're talking about some of the institutes, research centers. These are these collaborative groups I mentioned. Our institutes, one deals with advanced materials, one on aerospace engineering, and last one is the so-called Trache Institute for Sustainability in Engineering and Design. So these sponsor a lot of different activities, seminar series. Some of them have courses assigned, sponsored by these institutes. Within our research centers, again, you probably don't need to know all the details about these, but they connect researchers from different departments and even within from different faculties. So Center for Intelligent Machines is a well-known center looking at robotics. So you'll have electrical engineers, you have some mechanical engineers, you also have some computer scientists from Faculty of Science. Our most recent one, McGill Center for Innovation and Storage and Conversion of Energy, McICE, the one way down at the bottom. That's, as I said, just been ramping up over the last year. It's got very large funding for looking at all aspects of energy storage and energy conversion, alternative fuels and things like that. There is some related units. When you look at biology, bioengineering, the graduate program is actually run in conjunction with biomedical engineering, which is actually the Faculty of Medicine. So they have a joint graduate program. Bioresource engineering, we have some collaboration there. They're actually out at a different campus on the western part of the island. And computer science, we have some strong connections with researchers there, particularly in research areas like AI, for example. There's a lot of connections back and forth, often through the SIM system. So moving to the next slide, there's been identified kind of roughly 5 strategic research areas. This is not by no means all of the research, but there's a lot of professors particularly working in these areas. Bioengineering, not only in bioengineering department, but also in mechanical engineering, electrical engineering also do bioengineering research. Aerospace covers multiple departments as well. And Montreal is a big hub for aerospace companies. And so we have quite strong work going on in aerospace. Broadband communications, mostly in electrical computer engineering. We have our Trache, again, engineering, design for sustainability, and then the advanced materials, nanotechnology in multiple departments, both materials engineering, mechanical, civil, and probably even electrical computer engineering. Next slide talks about 4 initiatives that are taking place within the Faculty of Engineering, and probably 2 of them, I'll just mention them because they have an impact for graduate studies. And that's the first one, the Empower Initiative, which deals generally with kind of experiential learning or hands-on learning, if you like. And there's a lot of things going on here. For grad students, particularly of uses, some workshops. One of them is a series of workshops where it helps you to develop your individual development plan. So where do you want to head in life in terms of your research and what you need to get there? Like maybe you need some additional skills, soft skills, and then it'll give you kind of a menu of different things you can get involved in besides your research to get these skills. And then I'll mention the last one is our Engine Center. And actually this is really, Engine stands for Engineering, Innovation, and Entrepreneurship Center. And this is really, I guess, a segue to Katya, Marc, because I think rather than stealing her thunder, I think, pass it on to her to tell you a little bit about if you find something in your research that has a potential for a spin-off company or development for the development. This is really a lot of support for that, and there's a really strong emphasis on entrepreneurship and commercializing your research. And she'll tell you about what's going on there and maybe some examples of startup companies. So Katya, I will stop talking and give you the floor.
Okay, great. Thank you for that segue. So yeah, the engine is driving innovation. So it actually is an engine, right? Driving innovation. Briefly, my background. So almost 24 years at McGill, 10 years ago, having the good fortune to co-create, co-design, co-implement the programs of the Engine Center, and a large part thanks to alumni donors. Really, let's get into some of the details. The next slide. And before that, I was in the tech transfer office. And before that, I was in the chemical industry. And I did my master's and undergrad at McGill in chemical engineering. So happy to talk about my trajectory and career to any of you that are interested. So yes, driving innovation, the engine. So really for the engine community to make a positive impact and contribute value to our innovation and entrepreneurial ecosystems, locally, regionally, nationally, and worldwide. So what we do, we have multiple missions and we serve multiple parties, namely students, both undergrads and grad, really trying to help develop the next generation of McGill engineers, designers, innovators, change agents, and entrepreneurs. And we work closely, as Professor Prof mentioned, with the grad students and the professors in helping promote and accelerate the commercialization of their inventions and software. So getting the results from the lab out into the marketplace and serving society. And the third component is collaborating with industries. So we have a dedicated person to facilitate the R&D collaborations with industry. So matching the needs of industry with our expertise and the lab capabilities. Next slide. So how we're doing what we do, so through training and experiential learning programs. Most of our programs you'll be able to have on your co-curricular record. We're developing courses to get 4 credit, but that's for the future. Another pillar of support, the advising, coaching, and connecting we provide. The project funding that is available, personalized business mentorship, As we mentioned, the facilitating the relationships, the collaborations with industry for R&D, and then the physical center itself that you can't really see behind me, but it includes an open collaboration space, co-working space, bookable rooms, and seminar rooms that we share with our colleagues in the Career Center, that we share pretty much McGill-wide. Next slide. Some examples of impact since our beginnings. We've supported 160 early stage projects and startup ventures, which represents over 350 students and professors being trained by going through our programs. And we've distributed over $1 million in grants, awards, prizes, fellowships through those programs. And what else here? Also the extra advising and coaching. And through those programs, we're also measuring the increases, and we see significant increases in innovation skills and entrepreneurial skills of the students going through those programs. Next slide. Some examples. The snapshot of some of the 160 ventures. These are like a lot of successes here, where they started early stage with us and others. Blue City, that's a recent one from a PhD. It was from civil engineering. They were recently acquired by Velodyne. They're doing using LiDAR for sensing and monitoring for traffic control for smart cities. There's several here that are from grad students from their research and their professors, and some are also undergrads. I think I have another example. Next slide. So Carbicrete, that was the, that's a Merdad there when he was a PhD in civil engineering. And him and another alum got to co-found Carbicrete, where they are taking waste from the steel industry to replace cement to make concrete. So you're removing cement, which is a huge CO2 emitter, and then they're even able to add additional CO2. So they're making a carbon negative concrete, and they've graduated from the labs a few years ago, but now they have a location in Lachine. They've created jobs locally, and that one is going super, super well. And we will have actually an event, and you are all more than welcome. I put the link in there, or the address, to come to our annual entrepreneurial development seminar. We will have the CEO, you see him there on the left, Chris Stern, talking about his experience going from early stage research all the way to now investors and actual products being developed. Next slide. These are really recent examples from this fall cohort. So this is like September 2020 with our pretty much flagship program, the Tech Excel, where it's for training and project funding for student-led projects. So EK, that's a PhD candidate, Min Tran, out of electrical and computer engineering, with his professor Thomas Skopek and a postdoc, Gabriele Capilli. They're working on providing low-cost, high-precision nutrient monitoring system for more efficient use of water, and their early stage target market is for hydroponic agriculture or any closed loop agriculture like greenhouses. So we're working closely with them in terms of business mentorship and going through the lean startup training. And the second one, prefab AI photonics. They're in two of our programs, the Tech Excel and Invention to Impact training program. Again, with an assigned business mentor and very structured training. And their venture, their goal is to market their research based on machine learning for predicting and correcting nanofab errors and variations in integrated photonic circuits. So that's a postdoc working with Professor Odile Liboiron-Ladouceur in electrical and computer engineering. So there's a bunch of examples, but I'm just highlighting a couple. And I believe that may be my last slide. Next slide. Yes, so please reach out. We're here to help. We're on all the social media. Follow us if you're interested. Go to our website. You'll find the events if you want to register for tomorrow's event. It's yes, in person at our center. There's a networking cocktail, but there will actually be also live streaming happening if you can't join us in person. So thank you very much, and I look forward to hearing from any or all of you.
Thanks a lot, Katya. And now we'll move on to Kaila, tell you more of the details about degrees and funding and all the things you really need to know.
Yes, great. Thanks very much. I'm seeing lots of really good questions in the chat. So Nancy's answering those in writing, and we'll also have time shortly for us to answer those questions in real time. I'm going to give you some details about application processes, how to identify a supervisor, and funding. I definitely saw questions about funding. So here we go. You can go to the next slide. So we often get questions about what types of degrees are available at the graduate level, and we offer two different types of master's degrees. So there's a course-based master's and a research-based master's. And typically in our programs, the course-based or non-thesis master's is an MEng or Master of Engineering. And if you do a thesis-based or research-based master, it's typically a Master of Science. So you will see those two different, there's two differences, and I'll talk a little bit more about those going forward. Typically for research-based masters, you would need to identify a supervisor in advance. So you need to be accepted by a supervisor because they'll be supervising your project and working closely with you. Whereas for course-based masters, you don't necessarily need to have a supervisor. You can just apply to the program and take courses. For a PhD, similar to the research-based masters, you would need a supervisor to agree to accept you. And a PhD, of course, is a much longer degree. The master's degrees are 2 years, and a PhD is typically 4 to longer, typically 4 in our programs. As Professor Frost mentioned, we have 2 schools. So there's also a Master of Urban Planning and a Master of Architecture in the School of Urban Planning and the School of Architecture. And the Master of Architecture is the professional program. So after you graduate with a professional Master's of Architecture degree, you are qualified to be a professional architect. And the other professional program we have is the Master of Aerospace Engineering, which is unique. Montreal is an aerospace hub, and the Master of Aerospace Engineering we offer in collaboration with other local universities. So it's the only program where you really need to be able to speak French because it requires you to take courses from other universities in Montreal, and those courses are offered in French. But it's a great hands-on applied program that if you're interested in aerospace, it can be a real bonus for your future career. Next slide. So again, master's degrees, approximately 2 years, course-based, you take a lot of courses. There is a short research project, and there is relatively limited financial support. So typically, research-based programs have more financial support than are available for course-based masters. So you should be prepared to self-fund your degree if you're planning to do a course-based option. But it can be a great option if you're interested in sort of expanding your skill set and if the job that you're looking for requires an advanced degree. Whereas the thesis-based master's program typically is for people that are more research focused and are interested in continuing on into the PhD program. At McGill, we also offer the fast track, the master's to PhD fast track, which means you start in a thesis-based master's program, and then at the end of your first year, if you're on track, you defend your proposal, you can transfer into the PhD program, and it allows you to basically, you do 1 year at a master's level, but you can go straight into the PhD from an undergrad. So if you know that research is your passion, that's really where you want to go. It can be a quicker way to get you into a PhD program. Next slide. So if you're here in this presentation, you're probably shopping around for the right graduate school. And that we know there are lots and lots of options, and it's important to choose the school that's right for you. McGill, as Professor Frost mentioned, has a fantastic reputation. We've got amazing professors, great research labs and facilities, and a McGill degree can definitely position you to be very employable in the future. Montreal is an amazing place to live, but you can also, we recommend you talk with current students, see what they think. You know, where do they live? What is it like in their labs? What's the faculty like? At the graduate level, the type of research that's going on is also going to be, should be an important factor in choosing your school. So does your prospective school offer the program that you want? Do the professors do research in the area you're interested in? And of course, you also need to take into consideration whether or not you've identified a supervisor, whether you're able to find someone who's willing to work with you. So those are, that's information that might be important to consider. For some programs, you might need to write specialized exams like GREs or TOEFLs. So make sure that you check about those requirements well in advance of the application deadline to make sure that you write the exams or you have the qualifications that you need to apply. And a backup plan is always a good idea. You might apply to several schools. Try to keep your options open so that you've got lots of options in case your first choice doesn't pan out. So choosing a supervisor, this is a question that we often get. And one big question that students always ask is how do I get a supervisor to respond to my emails? And I think we'll maybe leave that question for the end with Professor Kietzig and Professor Frost, who can answer that question. But here's some advice that we've heard from supervisors that tends to work. Rather than waiting till the last minute, reach out well in advance. Ask your prospective supervisor for a video call if you're not in Montreal, or ask them if you can stop by their lab and meet some of their students. You can also email their graduate students, email their postdocs, and see if they would be available to meet with you. If you're in Montreal, invite them out for coffee and ask them questions. Many of our professors already have full labs. So the reason you may not be hearing back from people is that they currently don't have any space for graduate students. So that's an important question to know up front. Are they taking on new supervisees? And you may also want to know what's their track record for graduating students on time. Do students complete their degrees within the recommended period? Do people take longer? Do they support conference attendance? Do they support travel? Do they have students working with collaborators? What research are they doing? You might want to look up their papers, their most recent papers, and check out some of the work that they're doing. Are they actively publishing? Do their students publish? And then once you kind of get to know them, once maybe you've developed a relationship and you found someone you really want to work with, you might want to understand what their management style is, what their expectations are. Do they expect students to be in the lab 9 to 5, Monday to Friday? Would the research take place on the weekends? Would you be going to a lab somewhere else to do your research? Do they have the equipment and tools that you need to answer the kinds of questions you're interested in? Are they available for their graduate students? So those are all questions that you might want to consider when making your choice. So I saw a question about the SURE, which is great. For those of you who aren't from it's offered every summer, where professors will invite undergraduate students into their labs, and they work with a professor as a paid research trainee over the summer for 16 weeks, full time typically. And we support between 140 and 160 projects every summer. And this is also open to students outside of McGill. So if this is, maybe you're not looking to go to grad school right away, but maybe in a couple of years, you can always apply to our SURE program for summer 2023. The application's open in January, and all the projects are posted online. So engaging in some kind of research as an undergraduate, whether it's through a SURE program or as an undergraduate, taking an undergraduate course in like an independent research course, can give you a really good idea of what to expect in grad school, it'll let you know if research is really what interests you before you commit to a 3 or 2 or 4 year program. And it can also give you an advantage in your grad school application. So the professor you're working with can become a reference or a networker. If you work, say you're not at McGill, but you want to come to McGill, your professor may know colleagues at McGill, may be able to reach out to them, and their reference for you, their comments on you can be a really great factor in helping you to find a position at a school. So we strongly recommend that if you're interested in graduate school, that you do some research as an undergraduate. You move to the next slide. Funding, another really critical question that students always ask us: what funding is available? And I'm happy to let you know that there is funding available. So some of you may be looking for master's programs. We'll start with master's funding. We offer a couple different kinds of funding packages for prospective master's students. The MUSMA package is the McGill Engineering Undergraduate Master. McGill, you are eligible for this program. Can you hear me? I just got an internet is unstable message.
You're just chopping up.
Am I chopping up?
Just a little bit, but we can follow. Yeah.
Okay, let me try moving into another room closer to my router. Let's see if this is better. So to be eligible for this, you must have participated in some kind of research program as an undergraduate. So this could be the SURE program, or it could be an undergraduate research course, and a 3.5 GPA is necessary. You also have to be nominated by your professor, so you need to identify a supervisor. What I recommend for students outside of McGill is apply for external funding. If you bring in your own fellowship as a graduate student, it's much easier to find a supervisor who's willing to take you on. If you're free or relatively cheap, many professors will be happy to accept you into their lab. So you can apply for NSERC, the Natural Science Engineering Research Council of Canada, or depending on your field, health or social science, you can apply to the other agencies. The FRQ are the Quebec funding body that will support research. And many countries also offer funding packages. So there's the China Scholarship Council, the CONACYT, which is a program for the Mexican government. So if you're in another country, check with your government to see if they offer any kind of funding support for graduate studies outside of your area. We can go to the next slide, which I think shows doctoral degree, where there is more funding available. So if you can get through a master's program somewhat on your own, then you might have more luck with the doctoral degree. We also recommend external funding. Again, same reason. If you bring in external funding, we will top up the faculty will top up your external funding with a fellowship on top of your external award, and it's much easier to find a supervisor. So, funding for Canadians and permanent residents, we offer a META package, which is a 3-year funding package at $24,000 per year. And for international students, it's valued at $37,000 per year. The difference, of course, is that international tuition is much higher. So tuition is the responsibility of the student for the META awards. We also offer Vidage META fellowships for Canadians, which is our most prestigious fellowship. It's $32,000 per year for 4 years to the top Canadian applicants. And again, you have to be nominated by your prospective supervisor to be considered for the Vidage fellowship. And for international students, we offer another type of funding package at $27,000 per year for 3 years. So as you're discussing with your prospective supervisor, ask them about these fellowship packages and see if you would be a candidate for one of those. There's also travel funding, and we do encourage students during their degree to travel either for conferences or to do research. So McGill offers the Graduate Research Enhancement and Travel Award and the Graduate Mobility Award. And you can also travel abroad to other universities as a graduate research trainee. And these are great ways of getting exposure to other countries, to other types of research and other labs, and building your network, which is really important as you're going to be launching out into your own career in the future. Applications and deadlines. So this is important to note. As you're all aware, this is recruitment season, or graduate application season. We can go to the next slide. And for fall and summer entry, the next application deadlines are coming up. For electrical and computer engineering, any program in ECE, and for the Masters of Architecture professional degree, the deadline is December 15th. For mechanical, the deadline is December 31st for international students and January 15th for domestic. And then for all other students, all the other departments and urban planning, it's January 15th. So double check these application deadlines on the application page, because they do shift. The winter deadlines this year were earlier than in previous years. We haven't mentioned BBME stands for Biological and Biomedical Engineering, and it's a jointly run program between the Faculty of Engineering and the Faculty of Medicine. So they have a slightly different deadline, February 1st, there's no summer admission. And then for winter admissions, their deadline's November 1st, so coming up very quickly. So the BBME program is it's a biomedical, bioengineering, both master's and PhD programs. For the winter cycle, the deadline this year was actually September 1st for Canadians, and it was July 15th or August 15th for international students. That's past now. The deadline for winter 2023 is over, but most years, so next year it will be back to October 15th, and for Canadians, and for international students, it will be August 1st. Is that right? Double check these deadlines because they do shift from year to year based on various different reasons. So this gives you a sense, I think, of when the applications are due, but don't take my word for it. Make sure that you double check the deadlines on the website before you miss something important. So roughly the steps that you need to apply is, first of all, to identify a supervisor. Make sure you review all of the application requirements necessary and plan far in advance. If you need reference letters, you want to ask your referee for those weeks in advance so that you're not asking them to scramble at the last minute and submit something. If you need any other supporting documents, official transcripts or tests, make sure you get those well in advance. Submit your application. We've adopted a new application platform called Slate, so it's a slightly different process now, but I think that website is still the correct one. And then it's a waiting game. You've got to wait and see for the results. So these are just some more questions that you might ask before accepting any offer. Hopefully you get multiple offers to schools that you're really interested in. Funding, of course, can make a huge difference. Is the funding package that they offer, or is the funding situation going to enable you to live comfortably in the city and go to school without having to work? And I did see a question about the 20 hours of work per week for international students. Now that has previously Canada had limited international students to 20 hours of work per week, and now it's unlimited. So there is definitely, there may be a temptation to work more hours, but of course, if you're working more hours unrelated to your degree, whether it's undergraduate or graduate, you risk spreading yourself very thin. So just things to consider your funding situation. Reputation, of course, is important. If read your offer really carefully, do you have to pay tuition? So you may get a very generous package, but if you have to pay a really high tuition on top of that, then your package looks significantly less generous. Or is it funding plus the university takes care of your tuition? So those can be questions that might influence your decision. Cost of living, it's going to cost different amounts to live in Vancouver or Toronto or Montreal than it will be to live in a smaller city. So what is rent like? What is the cost of living? And what kind of support for future employment? So, what do you want to do when you graduate, and what kind of support is there for your career transition? So I think I've got a couple more slides and then we'll take your questions. As Professor Frost talked about, Montreal is a fantastic place to live, relatively affordable, although over the last couple of years, I think cost of living has gone up for everyone. But it is relatively lower than other large cities. So New York, Toronto, Montreal is still really good value. And for such a cosmopolitan, diverse city, there are people from all over the world living here. It's a relatively young city. We have 4 major universities. So there's a lot of students and a lot of students from all different parts of the world. McGill has a very strong postgraduate student society and a great facility in Thompson House, which is a restaurant bar, relatively cheap food and drinks. Lots of social activities, lots of department-specific student associations and groups and clubs where you can get involved in extracurricular activities, which can be a really important source of support for your mental and physical and emotional well-being during your graduate work, because grad studies can be stressful and difficult. Post-graduation employment. So people who do their degree in Canada are eligible for a postgraduate work permit, and we have supports that can help you to navigate that process. And McGill and Montreal are ranked typically very highly in terms of global employability. So we do have really good track records for finding work for our students. Montreal was ranked, this is a couple of years out of date, and I didn't have a chance to look it up, but Montreal was ranked the second best city in the world for millennials, accessible healthcare, really low tuition fees, and an incredibly vibrant city. So this image is from the Atwater Market. There are festivals, museums, theaters, cinemas, all kinds of events, cultural, social events. You may hear stories about the winter in Montreal, which is cold, but Montrealers don't stay indoors. They aren't afraid of a little snow, and there are typically things that take over the city. There's skating rinks downtown, summer festivals too, but there's winter festivals, there's Nuit Blanche. So it's an active and enthusiastic city all year round. Rental market, again, this is out of date. All of these numbers would go up all across the world, but compared to other major cities, Montreal rent is still relatively affordable. I think it's probably closer to $1,000 a month now for an unfinished 3-bedroom apartment, but I think all of the other cities have also gone up. So that can also be an important consideration. Have a look into the rental costs. Do you have roommates? What is your living situation going to be like if you were to move to Montreal? And finally, this slide and then the next one, please reach out. After this, we will be posting the recording on our graduate student page. We have appointments available for prospective students. You can meet one-on-one with an advisor to ask specific questions. You can email us at the email below. And then, Savio, if you go to the last slide, we encourage you to follow us on social media. We are active on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. You can see what's going on and what activities are happening in the faculty there. So I know I see a lot of chats. I haven't been able to look at them, but I think we have lots of questions. So thanks very much for your engagement. We have about 15 minutes left and we'll try to get to all of them.
I don't know, I might just read out some questions that I didn't respond to in the chat. So one question, Kaila, that you did sort of cover, but students are wondering if they have to actually find a supervisor before submitting an application. So I know you said secure supervisor, but is that a be all end all, or can they just have someone in mind and then apply and then secure the supervisor afterwards?
So great question. For a thesis-based master's and a PhD, definitely you need to have a supervisor. Don't bother applying unless you have a supervisor who's willing to take you on, because they get a lot of applicants. Well, I say that if you, it's strongly recommended to have a supervisor before you apply. Maybe Professor Frost or Professor Keatsig could answer about a course-based master's. Is it necessary to have a supervisor, or what's going to help you get into a course-based master's?
Yeah, I'm familiar with mechanical engineering where I am teaching, and you don't need a supervisor to apply. Typically, the course-based masters, you will do a project which will be supervised, but normally that's arranged after you come, and the grad director, often collects lists of possible projects that are available. So I wouldn't worry about supervisor if you're doing a course-based master's.
I will quickly add to that. For chemical engineering, you actually have to secure a supervisor if you do a course-based master's. But typically that's easier to find because the supervisor, the professor, doesn't have to provide funding for you. But you still, in our case, have to reach out to the supervisors.
I guess it depends on what you're looking to study. Another question was about our fast track program and whether you have to, well, there's two questions about this. So one was, can you decide to fast track to PhD after you started your master's, or should you know when applying? And then the other question was, should you be applying for a master's with the intent of fast track, or should you be applying directly to a doctorate?
Maybe I can address that. Typically, the fast track, you apply for fast tracking in your second term of master's. So you don't necessarily have to have decided when you start your master's whether you're going to fast track. You'll have to meet certain criteria. You have to take so many courses and get a minimum CGPA in those courses before you're eligible. But you typically apply in your second term, and then the second year start the PhD. But there's one other caveat I think we need to mention. It. There's another source of funding, so-called fast track award, and I don't think we covered it yet. And in this case, if you come in, you're really interested in fast tracking, you can talk to your supervisor and say, I'm interested in fast tracking, and then he or she will put you forward for a fast track award, in which case that provides funding for your 1 year of master's, and then will transition you into 3 years of funding for the PhD. So, so the answer is really a little bit nuanced depending on if you're really interested or not. There is potential for another source of funding, but it's not absolutely necessary. You can decide after coming and deciding whether or not, because a PhD is a big commitment, much longer. So you may not want to commit up front for that. Anybody else want to add to that, Anne or Kaila?
No, I think you covered it.
Okay.
Another question. Oh, I see we have a hand up too. I'll just ask this question first. Do we know if McGill graduate school programs give preference to McGill undergraduate students for admission?
Well, admissions is handled at the departmental level.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really dependent on the department. And I think the way that it's handled in most units is that the professors get a list of prospective students, and they're going to look at a number of different things. GPA, of course, grades are going to be really important. Research experience that a student has, if you come in with a publication, that's going to be really strong. So those are things that are unrelated to where you did your degree. I think, making sure that you have a really strong CV. If you have a really strong CV and if you're bringing in funding, I think you're very competitive. Otherwise, we know that our undergraduate programs are very challenging. And so we know the quality of students that come out of McGill programs. So that can be a benefit for McGill students who come from McGill.
We have some hands up. I don't know if students would like to unmute themselves. We have Michael Hu.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
All right. Thank you for the presentation. It was very interesting. So I have two questions, actually. I'll start with the first one. So my question was regarding non-thesis aerospace engineering master. So the question is that I graduate from a bachelor this April, and I've started working already. And I was planning to apply for next fall for the master. And I noticed that there will be a stage session for this aerospace engineering master. So I was wondering that for my case, which I have already started working, then for the stage, how are you going to work?
Who wants to? David, do you want to handle that one?
I mean, the stage has certain requirements, and so I mean, it would be naturally you'd go back and you'd do the stage of the company that you're connected with now, I suppose. But you know, there's certain requirements and expectations about the type of work you do, and then at the end of the stage, you write a report about, you know, what did you learn, and supervisor would write a short report. But it's really I think the benefit of the aerospace masters is that you get that connection through the stage with local industry. So I mean, you're kind of a special case that you already have that connection, but I don't see that it would change what's required of you for doing the actual masters.
Yeah, understood. I just want to make sure that I don't need to, because right now I'm working at Bombardier, so I just want to make sure that I don't, you know, have to quit the job and find another stage for this session. So I assume that I can, like for my work right now, I can assume another type of a stage basically, but I do what I need to do right in a report, and but this kind of counts as well as a stage, I assume.
Yeah, I think that's basically correct.
Okay, perfect.
There's also a director of the aerospace program, Professor Pascal Hubert in mechanical engineering. You could also email him to get, you know, more specifics about the program, because it is kind of a unique program among all our other ones. Okay,
understood. And yeah, for my second question, it was that as I mentioned that I'm not a new graduate student, so which then supposedly I've been working for 1 year before I entered the graduate study. So I was wondering that for the application, that the university for a new graduate study and non-new graduate students, for the attributes that we'll be looking at, are they going to be the same, or there are different attributes to be looked at?
Well, the university will look at your, you know, minimum requirement to get into be accepted. So there'll be a minimum CGPA. But in terms of connecting, you know, if you were to do a thesis program, this same process you'd go through finding a supervisor and so on. So I don't see it as really any different. In fact, someone with experience could be, you know, favored over a new student just because of their background. They could probably get started, hit the ground running in the research.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Hi. I'm just part of the fast track question didn't get entirely answered. So should we be I have somebody who, or I have a professor who already agreed to supervise me for he said direct PhD studies, but so I guess first, to be clear, there is no such thing as direct PhD at McGill. Is that right?
No, it is possible to start immediately, you know, to bypass immediately the master's. It's not very common because typically you'll be expected to take a few courses to get up to speed. And those courses are similar to what's required for the master's. And so many supervisors prefer to have someone started a master's, but if you have some connection already with a supervisor, you can discuss the possibility of starting directly, and that is possible.
Okay, and in that case, do I lose the ability to receive fast track funding, or I only get the 3 years PhD funding instead of 1 year master's and then 3 years PhD, as if I did master's and then fast tracked?
Kaila, can you, I'm just trying to remember the rules for the direct funding, because it's not very common.
I think if you're in a PhD program, you're eligible for the regular META, so the 3-year PhD funding. So the answer is that you would need to be nominated for the META award, which is a 3-year award. And if you're in the PhD program, you wouldn't receive that first year of master's funding.
Okay, thank you.
Zhang Yunbu, did you have a question?
Yeah. Hi, Professor
Hi.
Frost. I just have a question in regards to the NUSMA package. Actually, my professor just accepted me as his master student for the next year, and I'm just wondering for the NUSMA award, should I just apply it after I got the offer, or is do I need to, like, may I know the process and the deadlines of this package?
Yeah, you don't have to apply yourself. You just have to tell your supervisor that you're interested in this. And then when the supervisor fills out the form saying, I'm willing to supervise a student, he or she will just check off a box. Please consider this student for the MUSMA award.
Okay, perfect. And that's a guarantee, 100% guarantee, or there's still a chance I lose this package?
It's still competitive, and the number of MUSMA awards is, I'm not sure how many, the demand versus supply. Kaila, do you have a feel for that?
We give out a certain number to each department, so it really depends on which department you're in, and then it would depend on the number of students who are being admitted that year. So if it's for some reason, if there's a lot of students in your department that are being nominated for MUSMAs more than the allotment, you might not be ranked as highly, but typically we've been able to support really strong students. So I definitely encourage you to ask to be nominated for the MUSMA if you're qualified. So if you're a McGill student, over 3.5 GPA, you have research experience, and yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Actually, Kaila, I'm just going to correct our last answer for the direct entry into the PhD program, which comes into so-called PhD 1, which is kind of normally if you have a master's, you come into the second year PhD 2. But PhD 1, I'm looking at our rules. In fact, we do provide so-called META International coming into PhD 1, 3 years of funding, and then there is 4th year where the funding goes down a little bit. So it's 37,000 for the first 3 years each, and then the 4th year is 27,000. So
is that for domestic students as well? Is there a PhD 1?
This is international META.
I can't remember now.
I think it's. I
Richard,
don't remember.
Are you Canadian or international?
Yeah, I'm domestic. I'm from here in Montreal.
Okay.
You can always email us, and I can look into it a little bit further tomorrow if you wish. I'll put our email address in the chat here as well.
It's also something obviously to discuss with your supervisor, because supervisors, try as hard as they can to provide sufficient funding to get you through your program. And so even though the regular META program is 3 years, the Vidage, which is our more prestigious for domestic students, is 4 years. It's expected that if you have a 3-year program, the supervisor will try to, fund you in the 4th year at least, to continue, because normally 4 years is more typical for finishing, between 4 and maybe 4.5. So.
Thank you very much.
One other factor I just mentioned is that if you're an international student, after 3 years, your fees actually go down to domestic level, and so you actually need less funding after several years. So that's a benefit.
So I think we're almost out of time. We're right at 6:30, but I did see a question about, somebody asked about taking a break between their undergraduate and a thesis master's. Is it a good idea? And it definitely can be if you get some experience. I also, maybe I'll answer a second question from urban planning. Typically getting some outside experience can help to build your CV, can make you maybe more competitive versus somebody who comes right out of an undergraduate. It depends on what you do with that year. You know, if you do you have some relevant job experience, it might position you more strongly. We also hear it can be hard for students to be employed for a year, earn that money, see that regular paycheck coming in, and then it can be hard to get back into the mindset of school and where you're not earning that kind of money. So, but I think taking a break, seeing something different, testing out the waters of work life can be a good idea for people. Does anybody have any final comments or thoughts? I see there's more messages. Please do, maybe Savio, you could go back to the previous slide, and you can send any questions to this email address, graduatestudies.engineering@mcgill.ca. And we'll be happy to answer those questions in the future.
Yes,
Great.
if there are any questions that we didn't get to in the chat, we apologize, but definitely send us an email, reach out, and we'll be happy to guide you further.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thanks for your great questions and for joining us this afternoon, evening, morning.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.